round of applause for who you are. Stand up, stand up. I'm probably not gonna stand behind this podium. I'm not used to it, so. Listen, first of all, I talk to people who have no idea who they are, what their purpose is. Like, that's typically my audience. And this isn't it. Like, there's really no higher calling than to be an educator. I mean, these kids are really like putty in your hands. You know, and that responsibility you shouldn't take lightly. I don't think you do. But if ever you think that what you do doesn't make a difference, I mean, the teachers that shaped me, formed who I became ultimately as a man and who I continue to be, some of them are sitting in this room. I mean, they had a hand in my life that was so influential. And never, if you wake up in the morning and you think, why am I doing this? I'm not making a whole lot of money. Who's making a whole lot of money here? I'm not making a whole lot of money. You know, I might need to do something different. Just think about it for a second. Because the way I look at purpose, like God said, all right, there's something that needs to be done, needs to be fixed in the world. All right, so I can try to move pieces that are already there, and try to get someone to change who they are and become something that fills the gap. Or I can create something and send them into the world. And I think that's every individual here is here to enrich humanity, because God saw fit for you to be here. There's something in you that only you can do, that only you were supposed to do. And so if you neglect that for 1 minute, then that's a problem. And I believe the world would be utopian if we all did what we were supposed to do. All right, kids are like arrows. Right? A pastor of mine said that kids are like arrows. They can be thrown in any direction that you want them to go. But who's doing the throwing? You are. If you shoot them in a positive direction, that's where they're going to go. If you shoot them in a negative direction, that's where they're going to go. And ultimately, you shape how sharp they will become. So if you take a kid, sharpen him or her into an arrow, and shoot them in a positive direction, things that they can accomplish are phenomenal. You know, but you have that responsibility. All right, now, the difficulty is that every kid doesn't learn the same way. Like, there's a mechanism of learning. Now, in my book, I talk about, I don't know, how many people know Gillian Lynn? Ever heard of Gillian Lynn? She was a famous ballet dancer, no? So Gillian Lynn grew up in like the 1930s. Well, she was really, really disruptive in class. Moved around a lot, acted out a lot. Now today, if you got a kid that's disruptive in class, then he's got a behavioral problem. She's got a behavioral issue. They might put her on medication, whatever the procedure is. Well, back then there was no ADD, no ADHD. So the teacher said, I think we should take her to see a therapist. Right? Something's going on. She's not acting like a normal, she was probably 10 years old, a normal 10-year-old. All right, so they took her to see a therapist. After session after session, still the same thing. Totally disruptive. Just while she was in the office with the therapist, had to move around and fidget in the seat. So one day the therapist tells her mom, says, I need you to come outside. When he walks outside, he turns on the radio. So they stand outside the room and they look in, and they see her start to get up out of her seat and dance and move around with the joy on her face that her mom had never seen. And the therapist looks at her mom and says, nothing's wrong with your daughter. She's a dancer. I think you should enroll her in some dance classes. Well, Jillian would say later that movement allowed her to think. Right? For the first time, she was able to see clearly, hear clearly. But her mechanism of learning was movement. Right? So she goes on to choreograph Cats, Phantom of the Opera. And these things that we have was because someone allowed her gifts to flourish. They took the time to discover, how does this girl learn? What is it that makes her tick? And they didn't write her off as being, as having something wrong with her. So they didn't dim that light. Can you imagine if they'd have put her on medication? Or if they would have said she needs to go to a different type of school, She's just not going to be capable of learning in this environment. But they made changes, slight changes, probably didn't take much. And they allowed her to do what she does. And we've got some great things as a result. And I'm saying there's some kids that are going to be in their classrooms this year that have a different mechanism for learning. Right? They have strong purpose, strong gifts, strong talents. And your job, as difficult as it may be, is going to be to figure out how do these kids learn. Right? And don't just try to shove them into a box because that's the easy thing to do. And I know you have a room full of kids and you don't have a lot of time to really say, well, how does each individual kid learn? But I challenge you to try to take that time. Try to think outside the box. Can I do something different? Can I sit the classroom a little different? Can I bring in some outside help? Someone else that can look at these kids and say, well, this is what I think is going on. And I don't know exactly how what you guys have in place to do those types of things, but I would just challenge you to try to look at kids as individuals. We're all individuals. And I think for me, I had some teachers that took the time to say, what is it that you think you should be doing with your life? That's what we're talking about. Because we're not talking about how can I make money? How can these kids make money? See, this is what happens. You can find out your gifts and your talents. And then we say, how do I turn those gifts and talents into a money maker? Right? But I don't think that's how you should look at it. Because you can't see that far in the future. What I think is that you should take your talents and your gifts and you should bang on them and work on them for your entire life. And I say that you will make exponentially more money working on your intrinsic gifts and talents than if you just say, all right, what job can I fit them into? Because there's a job out there that these kids are going to create. There's a business that these kids are going to create. And if we just look at them and say, well, I need to train you to become this. Well, they're going to create something that's far greater than what you can even imagine. And it takes that type of forethought and foresight to be able to say, all right, I'm not going to push this kid in any direction. I'm going to let them define their own purpose. Because God communicates with us on an individual level, on an individual basis, right? And so I would just challenge you to take some time, look at these kids as what they are as individuals, and try to identify their mechanism of learning, their particular gifts, their particular talents, and allow those to flourish. I really did not have a specific message as it related to this audience. I came Thursday to speak to the community disciples. And I'm not gonna get too spiritual on you, but that's typically the direction my messages go.
Go ahead.
And then Mr. Boyd said, hey, you wanna come talk to 300 teachers? Maybe. But it's weird because I really like to focus on catching kids early. And you are the ones that are catching the kids early. What happens is, anybody know what a capitalization rate is? Well, I might ask a question to the teacher. All right. So, capitalization rate is the rate at which we capitalize on potential. And each different society and culture has different capitalization rates. So, if you take a kid that grows up, let's say in Inglewood, California, right, they test gifted in second or third grade. Well, they can't go to a different school because they have to cross gang lines to get to the school that cultivates that talent, right? So they're stuck in a place where they can't be educated properly. Now, when you catch them later in life, like 8th or 9th grade, if they make it that far, they haven't used their brain to the capacity that they're supposed to use it. So a brain is like a muscle, it atrophies over time. If you don't use your gifts and talents, you tend to lose them. Right? So when you see these kids in 8th or 9th grade, they might seem like they never were talented, they never were gifted, but they were. They just didn't have anyone cultivating those gifts and talents within them. Also, they dumbed themselves down to fit into where they were. I found myself doing that as a kid. I was gifted, I tested gifted early, but my friends didn't. Right?
right? And these are the people I was hanging around all the time. So I couldn't stand out that much and make them feel lesser than me. So I needed to fit in. And we find a lot of kids that do that. Peer pressure is real, all right? And I challenge kids all the time to think about it as reverse peer pressure. Like you should be the one influencing your peers and not the other way around. When you got one in a group of 10 who feels that they have a shot to go to college or they have an opportunity to do something great, but their friends don't view life that way, then it's difficult for them to pull the other 9 with them. They would rather be quiet, be reserved, go along with the crowd. And these are the ones that we need to identify. These are the ones that we really need to reach out to and pull up. Because leaders are really influential in a group of kids, right? And the most influential leaders amongst kids are usually the ones that are not the best kids, right? They're the most aggressive, they're the most boisterous, but they're probably not the best kids, the best and the brightest. So we need to figure out how to identify those stars who might succumb to peer pressure, pull them out of the group, and say, we need you to influence your peers, right? Like I said, for me, growing up in Caldwell County gave me a unique perspective. We know the demographic makeup of this city, and it just gave me a perspective on life. So when I went to other places, there were people that didn't have that same perspective. And now coming back and seeing some of my classmates who are teaching in this school system, the same school system that bred us, that raised us, that gave us everything we have today. It's just a blessing to be able to see you guys, see Bradley, Mandy, and Whitney, and these people that I went to school with to still come back and give back to the community. And like I said, I would just want to commend each and every one of you on what you do every day. Don't allow anyone to tell you, and don't allow you to tell yourself that what you do doesn't matter. Seriously, I mean, I know you hear this every year. Keep up the good work. You guys really matter, you're doing great. But think about it. There's so many kids in your class that come through those doors every day. And they're gonna do something. They're gonna do something. And you get to have a say-so in what it is that they do. You're going to, with their life, with their kids' life, with society. You get to have a real, tangible impact on who those people become. Who little Tommy ultimately becomes and develops into. You are responsible. And I tell you what, once you find your purpose, that's the easy part. Discovering what am I supposed to do with my life. The second thing is, now I have to actually do it. So when you said, all right, well, I'm good with kids, I care about kids, maybe I should be an educator. But then we know what comes along with it. There's a lot of difficulties that come along with being an educator. Now you have to make that transition from I know what I should do to this is what I'm going to do. And you've done that. And wake up with that